Gun and Guns in America, written by Michael W. Austin, narrated by Trevor Thompson. This book is dedicated to Anita Franklin and Heidi Cortez. Not only did they survive, they also fight for a world of righteousness, justice, and peace. Preface. I am a Christian, a gun owner, and a professor. I do not live on the West Coast or the East Coast. I live and work in the Bible Belt. Like millions of Americans, I have been around guns all my life. In fact, I owned a gun before I was born. It was a .22 caliber rifle, a youth model. My dad purchased the gun for $4 while my mom was pregnant. I have good memories of firing that single-shot rifle as a kid. I also remember my dad's gun cabinet in our family room, and later his gun safe, filled with shotguns for trap shooting, skeet shooting, and sporting clays. There were lots and lots of guns in my childhood home, handguns included. I grew up as a gun guy in a gun family. One of my clearest and most vivid childhood memories is of a pheasant hunting trip in western Kansas. We went out with several others, walking the field in a line. There was an ice storm that day, and we had to battle the layers of ice that kept forming on our shotguns. I am not sure how many pheasants I shot that day. I do remember at least one successful shot, and the pride I felt at hitting a target at distance. Now, as an adult, I only occasionally go shooting. In fact, it has been a couple of years now, mainly because I have other interests. I am not afraid of guns. I am not anti-gun, whatever that means. I am also not a pacifist. I am concerned about violence. I am even more concerned with the cavalier attitude many Americans, Christians and non-Christians alike, have toward violence and weapons. As I write, the American gun debate rages on. Gun violence continues apace. Volleys and salvos pierce the air, leaving real victims, both physical and emotional. Families feud, friendships break down, anger flares, reason becomes a stranger. Legal and moral issues become a jumbled mess. We have a problem. It is time to return to the table and talk. Such honesty requires frank self-examination, earnest listening, and real conversation. During the time I've been writing this book and sending chapters to my editor, two notable books have appeared. Beating Guns, Hope for People Who Are Weary of Violence, by Shane Claiborne and Michael Martin, and Common Ground, Talking About Gun Violence in America, by Donald B. Gaffney. I have learned from and recommend both. My goals in this book are twofold. First, I am going to argue that Christians in the United States of America need to carefully rethink the use of weapons, guns included. Measured, thoughtful, and robust discussion is long overdue. I hope to contribute to the discussion through biblical, theological, philosophical, and ethical arguments. Second, I am going to argue that the United States needs to implement more effective laws and strategies for limiting gun violence. There is almost universal agreement that some forms of weapon control should be in place. For example, certain people and types of weapons should be restricted. The question is, what types of regulations, rules, and restrictions? My first goal, the development of Christian character, is a moral goal. The second aim of the book, legislative reform, is a legal goal. We can improve. In general, I hope this book elevates our conversation and debate about violence and weapons in the United States. I hope to help improve our collective thoughts about guns, violence, and gun ownership. Throughout, I attempt to be fair. You may or may not agree with me, but I want you to sense my own integrity. I intend to be an honest broker of information and arguments. In the pages that follow, I provide important background information. These relevant data provide deeper understanding. My hope is that regardless of your personal beliefs about guns, you will be better informed and more aware of the issues and arguments relevant to your beliefs after you read this book than you were before you read it. But to be clear, providing information is not my only goal here. In my opinion, The status quo with respect to guns in America is unsustainable and unacceptable. Violence cannot remain our ready solution to problems. Many people are all too willing to turn to violence as an immediate solution. There are many other possibilities for resolving conflict. Other people seem to regard the Second Amendment almost as holy writ. For Christians, who happen to be Americans, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment, are of course very important documents. But they are not what is fundamentally important in this debate. For Christians, the pledge of ultimate allegiance is to Jesus, not to any government or nation. Jesus' life and teachings are of signal significance. We must start there. If there is a conflict between Christian teaching and the Second Amendment, then so much the worse for the Second Amendment. Broadly, this book is intended for anyone interested in considering these issues in more depth and understanding them from within a Christian point of view. This book is for people who have never owned a gun. This book is also for the people at the gun range and those sitting in hunting blinds at dawn. If you own a gun and love God, this book is for you. If you hate guns and love God, this book is for you. This book is not primarily aimed at professors, though I think much of it will be useful to them. Further exploration of the resources contained in the notes will be especially helpful for those who are interested in exploring any issue in more depth and detail. However, I am not naive about the actual audience of the book. Many pacifists will not be pleased with my conclusions. Likewise, members of the National Rifle Association, NRA, will be dissatisfied. Yet, I hope both groups will read with profit. However, there are millions and millions of Americans between the two poles. I write for them. In Chapter 1, we briefly explore the history of guns and the Second Amendment in America. It turns out that the truth is different from and a little more complicated than the standard story. We also examine the diverse views that Christians in America hold about guns and gun culture. In Chapter 2, we make the case that there is a moral right to own a gun. We also make the case that there are clearly limits to that right. If you cannot exercise the right in a responsible manner, then you forfeit that right. Chapter 3 reveals the most prominent lies and bad arguments in our ricocheting gun debate. Our discourse is often frustrating and apparently fruitless. In Chapter 4, the focus shifts to questions related to violence, guns, and the Christian faith. Here we consider some very pointed questions about the relationship between faith and gun violence. In Chapter 5, we examine appeals to the Bible in the gun debate. The Bible is often misinterpreted and misused in such contexts. In Chapter 6, we consider the impact of guns and gun violence on character. This tragic result is often ignored in the gun debates. For Christians, Jesus is our moral exemplar and our ideal. We seek to embody the virtues of Christ. Finally, Chapter 7 answers the question, what can we do about gun violence in America? The answer goes well beyond thoughts and prayers.